You may recall that I said Blue Stinger was not the worst Dreamcast game I've ever played. That's going to become relevant right about now because this game exists. Although, it's a strong word to call this a game. A game implies that there's, a direction and an ultimate goal, and that this is something you want to play. I'm not sure I can call 7th Cross Evolution a game. In fact, thinking about it, I'm not sure I can even describe 7th Cross Evolution as a thing. Because thing implies that it's something that exists with purpose. Something that can be described using words. We may have indeed found an anti-thing. Something so bizarre that it is beyond human comprehension, beyond words, beyond sensibility of any kind. I have spent my entire life studying video games, and I have spent the past decade talking about them here, and we have found something that I'm not sure I can put to words, but I'm sure as hell gonna try, because 7th Cross Evolution is something that I think needs to be talked about, if only to keep everyone as far away from it as possible. Because, damn, this thing is bad. Now, you may be curious as to what the plot of 7th Cross Evolution is. Well, so am Bloody I, and I played the thing. Seriously, let me paint you a word picture with my mouth, and give you a picture to go along with it so you understand. When you start up the game, you see this weird amoeba blobbins thing. You try pressing all the directions on the stick, but nothing seems to happen, so you must be in a cutscene, right? Well, that's when it happens. A horrible, horrible, terrifying clicking sound that gets louder and louder and will absolutely haunt my nightmares for as long as I live. And then, a giant enemy crab shows up and absolutely murders the blobbins, and the screen flashes to white. Okay, so that's a weird opening cutscene, except wait, hold on. We're back here, still doing this thing. What? Okay, so yeah, that's not actually a cutscene, but the fact that you have no control, yeah, that's because this game doesn't have analog support. I want you to understand this is a Dreamcast game, and while I am fairly Dreamcast illiterate, because all my Dreamcasts broke pretty much the moment I got them, I can tell you that every other Dreamcast game I own has analog support and is indeed supposed to be controlled by analog. This is a basic thing. And this game exists in three-dimensional space. You don't exactly want to be controlling it using a D-pad to begin with, because you're going to lose all sorts of precision with that. That's not good. But, okay. We're controlling this game with the D-pad, so what happens next? Well, you're in this weird little donut of shallows area. You've got a little bit of island in the middle of it, as well as some land surrounding it, as well as a deeper area. And here's a fun story, you're not allowed in any of that. Here's another fun story, you know that giant enemy crab? Well, I'm dead again because of it, thanks. But also, that thing, the moment it spawns in, it is going straight at you. And it can go everywhere on the map, and it detects you from the other side of the map, so yeah, it's not exactly fair. Also, none of this and none of anything here is explained. This is a terrible tutorial. Usually when you want to start a game off, you start a player off in a controlled space so they can figure out what the hell is going on. Not have them struggle to understand why they can't even move, and then kill them. Over and over and over because you've got them in an environment that will murder them no matter what. But we got controls down, we've got an enemy, let's just flee. Occasionally you might find these weird bubble things or these weird crystals. You might also want to know what they do. Well, me too. But from what I can tell, some of them raise some of your resources and others lower your health sometimes for reasons none of this is explained in game. And you just sort of have to track this on your own, so have fun with that. But again, you wander around trying desperately... Oh, I'm dead. Okay, well, you wander around collecting more of this stuff, trying not to die, and oh hey, now we're a leech thing. Sure, the crab will still instant kill us, and indeed does. But we continue and persevere, collecting more and more stuff, not really sure how any of this works or what any of this means. Welcome to 7th cross evolution. Gather more and more stuff, and then suddenly you're like this weird dinosaur thing, and you're way bigger than the crab, so let's go murder that thing finally. Oh my god, he still kills you in one hit. Okay, so at this point, we're still wandering around the same donut because in spite of the fact we're significantly bigger, that crab will still murder us and we can't go into deeper water and we can't go on land. Again, this crab can go anywhere and instantly detects us, so we're fleeing from our lives from something infinitely smaller than us because crabs are jerks. But we continue to collect random nonsense, and eventually we decide to explore this big red monolith looking thing, and here's where the game gets unclear and confusing. So hold on to your hats. This is gonna get worse before it gets better. You know, minus it ever getting better. Okay, so what the monolith is sort of like the core crux of the gameplay. The idea that everything we've been collecting up to this point gives us evolution points and resources to allow our weird dinosaur thing to evolve. I'm still not sure how it evolved on its own before this, but it did twice, because consistency. Either way, we go to this thing and we are presented with this weird pixel art sprite board, and we're just told to figure it out. Bear in mind, I have the manual. The manual explains absolutely nothing about this. There's also a guide on game facts for this game somehow that also goes out of its way to explain nothing about what you're supposed to do to actually like figure things out, or even give you any general ideas of patterns that will actually create desirable results. You are 100% on your own to try and figure this out. It is entirely obtuse and explains nothing. That said, there is at least something about this I can explain. See, when you actually start this game, before you go into like the little shallows donut that we're still stuck in at this point, and we've been playing for probably about 30-40 minutes at this point, you are given a bunch of random colors and stats. You can assign what colors those stats mean, and those colors are the same colors as the ones you can do pixel art with. Presumably, the colors you use will determine the stats of your abilities, right? Like, if you have the color you assign to defense, and you like coat the pixel board with that, you'll have really defensive parts, I would think. Except that I think I made something like 16 parts, and 14 of them were the exact same level 3 legs, and as far as I could tell, they all had the exact same stats. And fortunately, this game actually saves exactly which patterns you used to make these things, so you can see how wildly different the patterns I used were to make these things, and I got the same results. In fact, the only point where I really got anything different was when I decided not to color the whole thing in and just put one pixel in each corner and use a different color. And that actually got me wildly different results. So instead of level 3 stuff, I got level 30 stuff I couldn't even equip. Nothing about this horrible board of sadness makes any logical sense or is explained in any way to you. You just have to sit here and bash your head against this brick wall if you want to actually continue. But I mean, to be fair, that's a very, very strong assumption that you'd actually want to continue this nonsense at this point. Again, we've been stuck sitting in this shallow donut getting murdered by crabs over and over and over and over again for the better part of an hour, and we've still made zero progress. And if by some miracle you can actually go out of your way and actually create these body parts, you still don't actually get them because you need resources that you get from killing monsters and collecting random nonsense. So hopefully you've got enough of that. If not, keep swimming around that donut trying not to get killed. Oh, okay, awesome. We've got legs of a crab, so now we can actually go on land and actually in the deeper shallows. Cool, we can make some progress. Oh, except I just got murdered by a shark and I got taken back to the start and I lost everything. You can ultimately die and lose everything you've built up. You respawn and you have to gather the resources again. The only thing that really gives you a sense of progress here if you die is that, first of all, the game remembers what evolution blueprints you've created using that terrible pixel board of nonsense, and that your stats slowly do increase over time for every kill you get, and that maintains across your entire playthrough, which is good. As long as you get 1 or 2 kills every now and then, if you continue to beat your head against this brick wall, provided you don't, cause yourself to bleed to death by trying to do that, you will eventually, with enough effort, finally defeat one of those jerk crabs that keeps murdering you. So that's a plus, but You know, the amount of effort required to do that is just absurd. It's insane what this game actually is asking you to do in order to actually make the smallest, most minuscule amount of progress, at least in respect to killing the very first thing you run into. Okay, so, new plan. At the other side of the deep end of the water, there's a cave. We're gonna make a break for it. We gotta get our crab legs and go. So we do. We make it to this cave where I genuinely don't think any other human has ever set foot. And we enter this cave, and what's inside? A giant worm that, and this will shock you, kills us. Awesome. Okay, fine. So more grinding. Grind, grind, grind. Get back to cave. Fight the worm again. Somehow miraculously manage to kill it because we used the magic system, which, yeah, there's a magic system in this game. It's not explained anywhere. It's probably one of the easier to understand things about this game. Some parts give you magic, you can heal, you can use different sort of combat magics and stuff, and that finally helped me kill this thing. And there's a cave at the other side of this. So what's in this magical cave that we had to kill this stupid boss, suffer all those terrible crabs, suffer the floating beetle things that were just as vicious as the crabs, but at least they couldn't go on land to cut through the donut of sadness to kill you faster. You want to know what's in this cave that we had to defeat all this nonsense for? A big, fat nothing! Nothing is in this cave, okay? Unless you like a really ugly green color, there's nothing for you there. It is an empty, dead end that just mocks all the effort you put into actually getting here. But I backtracked to where I fought the worm because a few more monoliths appeared, and one was glowing. So I interacted with that, and ostensibly these monoliths will teleport you to different areas. So I got teleported to an underwater area, filled with a bunch of fish that, and this will again shock you, instant kill you. But fortunately, I have the power of having massive amounts of slowdown because this game does not run very well. I'm not sure if that's because this is running on the Odin or if this was actually how it was programmed, but either way, there's massive amounts of slowdown down here and a big dark trench that I decided to fling myself into and got eaten by the Gru. And then it happened. I was back at the Donut of Misery, getting assaulted by crabs yet again. And at that point I stopped because I'd spent 2 hours on this nonsense and got basically nowhere and felt like I was accomplishing nothing. That is what 7th Cross Evolution is at its core. It is purposeless. It is intensely obtuse to the point where it's detrimental to the player, to the game itself, and this seems to be by intent from the developer. When I was streaming Blue Stinger, one of my viewers came on and told me that one of their friends actually tried to speedrun 7th Cross Evolution. And I asked them if their friend could explain the pixel art nightmare evolution board thing to me. And the only response I could get, and bear in mind this is me running off my memory here so I might not get it word for word, was, I don't think that the developers understand how this game works. And I genuinely believe that. I don't think anyone involved with this game actually understands how this works, because it's just a bunch of nonsense that makes zero sense or coherency. You want to make more parts to ostensibly upgrade your character, but you have no sense of consistency or understanding of what's going to develop what parts in what way. I tried making numerous things, and bear in mind, you have to spend resources to actually even come up with these designs, so you have to grind in between each use. I came up with like 20 different designs, and something like 18 of them were the same pair of legs over and over and over again. I put one pixel in a corner and then suddenly, oh hey, I've got level 30 something that I can't equip because I would need to grind for probably years to build up the necessary required stuff in the starting area. You're supposed to progressively get like level 1 to level 2 to level 3 and so on and so forth, getting better and better as you advance through the game, but you have no way of understanding how to get there or what you need to do to develop these things. You just have to fling shit at a wall and hope that the wall presents you with a usable piece of equipment that isn't something you already own. And then you have to go and grind resources to get them. The only sense of actual progression you feel like you have any direct control over is the minuscule stat boosts you get if you keep killing things over and over and over again. But it's such a small boost that you might not even notice it. I spent 2 hours streaming this game, and we got basically nowhere. And we were doing everything to try and figure out how to make this game more playable, try to understand how this works. I even popped onto GameFAQs to look up a guide, and that was absolutely of no help. How does someone make a guide for this? That's a real mystery. The fact is, Seventh Cross Evolution is something that defies words. It's something that defies logic because nothing in it really makes any consistent sense. It's just a game where you have to grind a whole bunch and hope that random nonsense lines up in such a way that you make some form of progress. And you know what the most absolutely stupid thing about this is? It's boring. Like, at least if it was interesting or weird, or, you know, fun, I could recommend this in some capacity, but it's not. It's swimming around the same donut over and over, doing laps, trying not to get murdered by the same crab, collecting the same crap to spend it to hope to make some minuscule step forward in terms of progress, only to lose all of it because you got murdered. That's what Seventh Cross Evolution is. It is nothing but punishment, on top of just nonsensical obtuseness that has no consistency. And I struggle to think of anyone who could actually enjoy this nonsense, because all I see is pain and punishment. I guess masochists maybe, but this is infinitely worse than Blue Stinger in terms of gameplay, because at least Blue Stinger was a game. Sure, the plot made no sense. Sure, there were things that really went against established stuff that comes out early, and sure, everything about it was unpleasant, but at least it was something you could play to kill a little bit of time. This, I think if you played this for long enough, it would put you in the ground. Or you might ascend to the next level of humanity for having some kind of super evolved brain to try and comprehend this enigma of an anti-thing. But Seventh Cross Evolution does not play in any sort of enjoyable sense. The best part about it is the long grind, and that's not a good thing. Everything else about it is nonsensical, and you're just going to be wasting time and being punished for even attempting to. And I genuinely cannot find anyone that I could recommend this to in terms of gameplay. Now, the overall presentation to Seventh Cross Evolution is okay, I guess. The visuals are nice. They certainly look a lot better than Blue Stinger, but, and I think this is important, there is no music in this game. Okay, well, there is music in this game, but for whatever baffling reason, not in the starting room. You know, the room with the horrible crab clicking, and where we've spent the majority of the 2 hours we've spent with this thus far. Yeah, no music, just sound effects of you swimming around and crab clicking, and it's horrible. Once you actually get to a place where there is music, it's actually pretty decent, but, you know, you gotta get there, so good luck. So, I guess I'm just gonna have to loop the terrible clicking of the crab claws over and over again. Let's not do that, that's a bad idea. But the point is, if you want a game that looks okay for a Dreamcast game, you know, this was, I think, a launch title in some areas, so yeah, it looks okay. It certainly looks better than Blue Stinger, but there's not much to the sound design other than the horrible clicking that will be stuck with me for the rest of my life and induce nothing but nightmares. Now, if you want a copy of Seventh Cross Evolution on the Dreamcast, for whatever reason, I'm seeing a disc only for $60 for some reason. There's not really too many listings on here. Worldwide, there's only like 10, so I'm guessing this isn't a game too many people have or are willing to talk about or even think about, which is probably for the best, because honestly, and this is coming from an archivist who believes everything should be preserved, this is something that should be forgotten. At least in a practical sense, because I don't think as a game this is something anyone really should play. It might be worth keeping in a museum as just a weird footnote in the Dreamcast launch history, I guess, but Seventh Cross Evolution is an exercise in frustration and confusion. Nothing about this game is explained. You have to figure everything out for yourself, which would be fine if anything about this game actually made sense. But it doesn't. It just throws you headfirst into a shallow donut of sadness and tells you get murdered by crabs a whole bunch, and if you don't, well, everything else certainly will. And if that doesn't happen, well, here's a bunch of pixel art, figure it out! Yeah, that's what this game is. It's boring, it's confusing, and it's nothing but a mess. And I genuinely struggle to think of anyone who could enjoy this game, outside of it being just a weird footnote. Because it does not feel like a complete game. I don't know who said this was okay to be released, because this is an unacceptable state for a game to be in. It is unintuitive, it is obtuse as hell, and genuinely, I struggle to think of anyone who can enjoy this in the state it's in. Maybe if there was some better explained tutorials, maybe if that evolution board was not entirely obtuse, but maybe just a straight line of evolution, just say, okay, I want an arm, okay, I want a head, and since I've got the level 1, it gives me the level 2. If it did something like that, it would be a lot easier to work with, and it would be easier to recommend, not from any sort of enjoyable standpoint, because there'd be a lot of grinding and punishment, but at the very least, it would be something you could work with and at least feel like you're making some headway in terms of progression. This game has none of that. This game is just a bunch of crabs murdering you over and over again, hoping that you figure stuff out because this game can't be asked, and the fact is, no human should be asked to play this game. Because seriously, it is an exercise in frustration and misery. Blue Stinger is not the worst Dreamcast game I've ever played. That's because this exists, but only if you consider 7th Cross Evolution to actually be a game, and not some sort of experiment into human torture, which, to be fair, feels more like what this actually is.